Hello, welcome to my channel, or welcome back. I hope you're all doing well today. I'm kind of sensing a really heavy energy coming from the collective right now. Like it could be this feeling of something constricting your heart or something pressing down on your chest. And the guidance that I'm getting for dealing with this feeling would be breathing and counting your breaths. So when you breathe in, count 1, and when you breathe out, count 2, and continue doing this up to 10. And when you get to 10, start again from 1 on the inhale, and continue this until that heavy energy dissipates. And something else that could help would be a visualization where when you breathe out, you're breathing out this dark purple black smoke, and it's lifting this constriction and this weight from your heart. And when you breathe in, you're breathing in this sort of yellow gold glittery light, and you're breathing that straight down into your stomach, where it forms this glowing ball that then empowers you and lights you up from the inside. Don't shoot the messenger, guys. I'm just passing along this information. Whether it's useful to you or not, that's something you have to decide for yourself. And if anything in these videos resonates with you, that's the information that you should be taking. And if there's anything that you just feel like you don't necessarily agree with, or it's not really relevant to your situation, you can discard that. And this will help you get the most value out of these videos. All right, let's draw some cards. All right, we have the Knight of Wands. Okay, so I feel like there's something almost, there's like a level of passion in you right now that has been charging ahead for a while, but then I think recently it's almost like there's something that has caused this passion to be held up, and I think it corresponds to this heavy energy, where I think you were kind of feeling more light and free before, but as soon as this heaviness hit you, it was almost like being held up or like hitting a roadblock. And the sense that I'm getting is not necessarily that the energy is so inhibitive of being like oppressive, but it's almost more like the amount of energy is heavy. Like you're taking on a lot more onto your shoulders. And this could be kind of part of it, where it's like if there was a stick in your path and you were walking along, you could just step over it, right? But now if there was a pile of sticks, they're still just sticks, but there's so many that you can't step over it as easy, right? So I get the sense that maybe in dealing with this heavy energy, it's kind of like working through different aspects of it and really taking your time to approach it as this obstacle instead of feeling like it's something completely blocking your path. All right, we have the 8 of Swords here, and this is again this feeling of like, yeah, you're almost like surrounded or maybe feeling trapped or feeling constricted, and it could be like there's this feeling that something is holding you back right now, especially relating to this feeling of heaviness or being bound, where it's almost like you feel like there's something like this character who's tied up here. It's almost like there's something wrapped around you that you need to cut loose in order to be able to continue on your path. And it almost feels like maybe there's something to work through in this energy for sure, is what I'm getting. Is it's almost like something you can't quite run from because it's so deeply tied to you. It's something where you really have to sever that cord. And I feel like part of this could be in your relation to handling this heaviness. It's almost like you need to cut the cord that tells you that this feeling is holding you back almost, and try and see the feeling as something that could be a blessing to you. And in some ways, it's like almost like you're producing these negative emotions from the heaviness rather than the heaviness being the problem itself, right? So it's almost like you feel this feeling of heaviness and that's one thing, but then the emotions kind of come from that, where then it's like, oh, I'm a little bit worried that I'm not going to be able to take on my responsibilities with this feeling, or I'm worried that I'm never going to be able to overcome this feeling, or that it's going to stick with me forever. And then these are the feelings that are then causing the negative feelings in your body to spring up. But the actual energy itself is not quite the problem. But once you tackle it head on, then it's like you're working through it, and then those emotions no longer spring up. All right, and I dropped a couple cards. When you drop a card, it means it's important. So let's see what we have here. Okay, we have the 5 of Wands. So this is this feeling of like there's something in conflict here where, yeah, I think you're kind of almost fighting this internal battle, and that could be what is causing this energy to feel heavier. Where when you work with the energy, it almost feels like it's this cooperative act and then something new is being born out of it. But I think when you try to fight it, that's when it becomes like more solid and hard to see through. But I think when you're working with it, it's almost more like a flow, kind of like a flow of energy. So I think that's something really important in this process, is resolving this feeling of inner conflict. And like I mentioned, with these negative emotions that spring up, it is because of this inner conflict. Like maybe there's some lack of trust in yourself in being able to handle these things, or maybe some frustration in yourself when these feelings come up of like, I wish I wasn't having these thoughts, or why do I feel like I'm dwelling in this emotion or dwelling in this feeling? And then it's this feeling of almost anger or frustration at yourself. Whereas I feel like it's more productive to try and approach this in a sense of how is this serving me? And like, how can I allow this feeling to exist and work with it and live with it without feeling any sense of bitterness, anger, frustration, or guilt towards myself? All right, and then we have the Magician. So there is this feeling of kind of having the tools that you need to address this energy or this feeling. And it's just a matter of using them in the right way. And also with this card, he is pointing down to the earth, but also up to the heavens. So it's this feeling of having the tools you need, but also understanding how to find this balance of the things in your physical human body, like these emotions that come up, and then these physical feelings you might feel in your heart, with these energies that you feel more in like your spiritual body, in whatever way you want to conceptualize that, of maybe something relating to your heart chakra versus your actual heart, and finding kind of the correspondences between the two and being able to relate them and use the tools at your disposal to resolve these situations. And there is this kind of feeling of having all the power, in a sense, where when you have these feelings, it's important to instill the confidence in yourself that you're able to handle it and you're able to work through it. And certainly there are external tools that might help every individual person, so I'm not necessarily saying that these tools are not helpful to you. But I think it really begins with understanding that you yourself are the best person to be able to tackle your problems. And sometimes understanding how to tackle your problems might mean understanding that you need to seek out a mental health professional, or maybe seek out some sort of care, or like a group therapy session or something like that. But it's really important that you feel confident in yourself in knowing what's best for you. And sometimes this does mean looking for what the world has to offer you and working through these difficult times. All right. We have the Seven of Pentacles here. So there's this feeling of like waiting, or almost like a wistfulness, or yeah, like this kind of sad feeling where it's almost like having to be patient or having to work through things and give things their time could almost be making you feel kind of sad or frustrated. And I feel like there's this feeling of like you're missing the point almost when this happens, where it's like you could be looking a little bit too far ahead into the future in a way, where I think if you actually stop to ground yourself in the present, then you can enjoy things more. So it's sort of like when you're looking to the future of this thing that you might have in the future, and you're waiting for that to happen, and there's this feeling of like, I won't be happy until that thing happens, then you're depriving yourself of your entire experience of the present moment. And in a sense, this also creates a habit of doing this, looking ahead, where if you're always looking ahead to the future and always feeling unsatisfied and always feeling like you're lacking something, no matter what you get in the future, even if you get those things, you'll still be looking ahead even then. And so even then, when you get these things where you're telling yourself, now, when I get this, I'll be happy, when it actually happens, you're going to realize, oh, I'm not actually happy, because now there's still other things where I feel like I have these unsatisfied desires. So it's really about forming this relationship with your present condition, of this feeling of like, I already have everything I need. Everything is as it should be. I'm right where I need to be. I don't need anything else. And just this feeling of security that this then grants in your body, where it's not like you're in this fight or flight mode of like feeling like you have unsatisfied needs, or you're lacking something, because in reality you have all your needs satisfied, or at least I would hope if you're watching this video you have like shelter and food and that sort of thing. But really what is unsatisfied are your desires. But when you start to conflate your desires with your needs, then you've slipped into this feeling of being unable to feel present in your body and feel safe in your body. Because if you respond to an unmet desire the same way you respond to an unmet need, then this puts your body in a constant alert mode. So, like, for example, if you were on the streets and you didn't know where you were going to sleep that night, you would have this feeling of panic in your body. And maybe there's some unmet desire, like maybe this need for romantic love. You might almost start to conflate the two and start feeling this panicky feeling of like, I don't know what I'm going to do. But as you can see, like the gravity of these situations is not the same, because in one situation your body is safe. If you have this unmet desire for romantic love, you're still going to have a bed to sleep in and a home to be in, four walls and all that. And so in this sense, you should just let your body rest. Take a deep breath and you'll be okay. But when you're actually in this situation that is distressing or threatening to your physical body, then that is when that reaction is appropriate. But you can see how this conflating of desires and needs then makes every moment of your life feel like you're in survival mode. So it's really important to kind of separate these things out. And when these feelings arise, where, like I mentioned, with this feelings in your heart that really relate to, you might genuinely feel like a kind of scared prey animal, of really thinking about, like, is this the appropriate reaction to be having in a situation? Or is there something wrong with the way I've wired myself in order to have this response to something that is just not actually appropriate for this response? Because these physical responses in our body can really help us in times when there is a genuine danger. Then we do need to feel these things. But on a day-to-day basis, when we're just trying to enjoy our lives, then these feelings are not so productive to us. All right, we had a few cards come out here. We have the Ten of Wands. So there is this feeling of carrying a really heavy burden, of like, maybe you're almost taking on too much. So like I said, this energy feels heavy because you're taking on so much of it, and you're really carrying a lot on your shoulders. And I feel like this is not necessarily something you can always choose, because I think particularly if you're a very sensitive person, you might just pick up on a lot of things in your environment. So when there's people around you who are maybe feeling stressed out, or there's some sort of stressful situation in your life, it's almost like these energies float around you and you sort of breathe them in a sense. And like I was telling you with this breathing visualization exercise, you can almost do a certain thing when you start to feel those energies around you. It's like, instead of breathing in all the black clouds around you that other people are breathing out, and just absorbing that into your body, you can visualize it transforming in your body. Like, as you breathe in the black smoke, there's this mechanical process that happens in your body and turns it into this white glowing light. And then when you breathe that out, now you're almost like clearing the energy of the environment. So I feel like this could be something that could be helpful to you if you feel like you're taking on a lot of heavy energies, is to really think about ways you can almost purify and transform those energies sort of right when it happens, instead of letting it build up. And the sense I'm getting is like parrying in a video game, right? Because you could allow yourself to take the blow and then drink a health potion, but it's so much more effective to parry the hit and then you don't get hit by it. So when you're working with these energies, that's really how it is. It's like, when it first springs up, you parry it and maybe do some sort of visualization to do that, and then immediately it's resolved. Whereas if you let things build up and you kind of dwell in it and take it into your physical form, that's when it becomes like more of a problem to address. So it's one of those things where it's like, you want to get to it sooner than later and not end up carrying this whole burden, right? Because if you just carried one stick at a time, it's so much easier than struggling with all of this. Oh, the Devil. I never pull this card, so this is scary to see. um, there is this feeling of, yeah, being bound to something still. And with this other card that came up with the Eight of Swords here, there's this feeling of being bound. And I feel like where you're being bound is, again, like to this kind of earthly feeling of like conflict and maybe just identifying too much with certain things in the world, where like this is where you could be picking up on some of those heavy energies, where maybe you're in a situation where it's not actually beneficial for you to take this onto you and take this home with you and carry it with you through your day. It's better that you just don't touch it in a way. So the example I'm getting is like of some sort of conflict at a workplace, maybe, where a mistaken identification could be like taking this workplace conflict as something that is relevant to you. And so then maybe you come home in the day and later and you're still thinking about it. Or even when it happens, it almost strikes at you in some way. And this is a mistaken identification because these things that are happening in the world are only reactions to our internal state, in a sense. And so when you're in a calmer internal state, these things won't spring up. But when you look at these things as happening to me, and this is now affecting me, then that's when you've identified with it and you are then turning it into something that has power over you. But when you understand that this is sort of like an illusion or a movie that's playing out in front of us, and you kind of watch it from this external view, then you don't identify with things as much. Like you understand that these people in this conflict scenario are not actually affecting me in a sense. Like, unless you're physically in danger, if there is some sort of conflict where you are physically or genuinely like being emotionally harassed or something, then it could be important to take action to get yourself out of that situation. But when it comes to just passively taking on these things that you're sort of absorbing, like maybe you're not even personally involved in a conflict, you're just witnessing it happen, and you sort of take that on to yourself. And this is something that is really formed early in our childhood of, we're almost this enclosed system in a way, and you can really see this in children as they have this kind of happiness about them, and they're just kind of in their own world. But then as you get older, you start to absorb the conflict around you. Like if you've ever been a child and had to witness your parents fight, or if you've maybe witnessed this in public where there's a couple with their kid and they're fighting, you can see that this child is really absorbing all of that, like almost like literally like a sponge, and just soaking up all this negative energy. And it's really difficult because, again, like I mentioned, these things are really formed early in our life. Is this feeling of the fact that your caretakers for you as a child should influence your emotional reactions to things, so you're almost always looking to them to see how they might react. Or maybe especially if you had a parent or caretaker who was quite volatile, almost kind of this being hyper vigilant or being on edge, because you're really worried, like, oh, it's almost like a ticking time bomb. When might they blow up? And when they blow up, then I really have something to worry about. So you're kind of always looking to other people to see their emotional reactions. And this is something that causes you to pick up on a lot of these heavy energies, because you can see someone else having an emotional reaction. Or maybe you're even projecting some sort of feelings where, like, you're looking at their face and assuming what kind of emotional reaction they're having. Or maybe they are genuinely putting out this energy into the environment, and you're taking that into yourself. And it is almost like this good trait in a way, because it means that you're very empathetic and you're very perceptive, and you have a lot of care and attention towards other people's emotions, which is really a blessing in some ways. But you also need to understand, like, when to turn this ability off, or when to transform it a little bit, like when there are energies that you should really take on and deal with. Like if you're trying to resolve something emotionally with someone who's close to you, that could be a time to do this. But when it's kind of strangers, or maybe people who are more like acquaintances and they're having some emotional reaction, maybe you just don't have to worry about taking that on too much. All right, and then we have the Five of Pentacles here. So there is this feeling of like maybe you, again, like this really strong feeling of empathy, and like maybe part of this deals with like you're taking on so much of the energy from all the things happening in the world, in a sense, and you almost feel all this pain and suffering at once. And when you see something that reminds you of this, it's almost like it becomes real to you in a sense, where in your imagination, these horrible things happening in the world, it's already bad enough. But when you see some actual evidence of it, then it's like it almost strikes at you in a way that you then can't deny. And like specifically with this feeling of like if you have ever seen someone who is injured or homeless out on the streets, and especially in the winter, and maybe you really looked at like how frostbitten their limbs are, and it's just so horrifying, and it kind of like makes you feel sick looking at the side of humanity like that we allow things like this to happen. And it could be something that just makes you so just sad, like it really brings you down. But again, it's this feeling of like not identifying with it too much, like being able to understand that these horrible things that happen in the world are this representation of these sick and twisted aspects of humanity. And that, like, yeah, there is this kind of like devil energy associated with it, and you can kind of allow yourself to see it as good and bad in a way of like instead of taking on this energy of like the world is this when you see these horrible things happening and like this is all there is in a sense, it's trying to find a way to like flip it around and understand that okay, yes, there are people who are quite cruel and influenced perhaps by the devil or just by some sort of evil side of them who would allow this to happen. But on the flip side, there are other people who are working to try and resolve these issues. And in the sense, there's kind of like this battle for good and evil kind of going on at all times, and maybe has been going on since the dawn of eternity, and kind of trying to find your place in that as someone who is a warrior for the light. But yeah, like specifically, I think a lot of this heavy energy comes from being too fixated on the devil and seeing it as all there is, and just identifying too much with the darker sides of things that you see in the world. All right, let's draw maybe a card on, yeah, like just trying to resolve this energy a little bit more. All right, the Hanged Man. So there is this feeling of being suspended in a way, and again, like this is another card where the figure is tied up or bound in some way. So yeah, it could feel like there is something relating to this heavy energy that feels really restrictive to you, where almost you feel as if you can't move, or you feel paralyzed, or maybe you feel frozen. And I think that what this is coming from, this feeling of being paralyzed, is sort of like you're caught between two worlds in a sense, where it's almost like the past and the future are both tying you down or like pulling you from both sides, so that it's almost like there is like a tie binding you both ways, right? Where you can't actually be free to move in the present moment because you're tied both to the past and to the future. So maybe that you have also some issues of dwelling in the past, of maybe things you had in the past, relationships you had in the past, or like things you would wish you'd done differently, or just, I would say especially, it's this feeling of wanting to maintain the past or go back to the past, where it's like there was something that you wanted to hold on to and you're still clinging onto it in some ways. And then in the future, it's almost like you're grasping for something that you feel like you can't quite have, or something that you really strongly desire. And it's this dual feeling of the clinging and the grasping that is then stopping you from being able to flow and move freely in the present moment. So it's really about releasing both of these energies and allowing yourself to come into a really like loose, free feeling where you don't have anything restricting you, you don't have any strings attached to you in a sense, and really this feeling of freshness. And like I mentioned at the start of the video with this breathing exercise, you can really think of it as every time you breathe in, you are being reborn. And there is a quote from the Buddha talking about like how long is the human lifespan, and he says it's like the span of one breath, right? So like every time we breathe in, we are a new person, and every time we breathe out, we die. So it's like allowing yourself to die in that sense of leaving everything that you've clung to in the past and everything you're grasping for in the future to die and fall away from you. And when you breathe in, you are completely reborn into this new, fresh way of looking at the world, where it almost feels as if you're looking at it through a child's eyes or from a completely different perspective. Instead of being caught in, yeah, this really restrictive feeling where maybe in the past it almost feels like you were You could get caught in this feeling of like watching a movie scene loop in your head a lot of times, is how I'm thinking of it, of like maybe getting caught in memories. And it really feels like that scene in A Clockwork Orange where he's like strapped down and he has his eyes peeled open and being forced to watch these movies. And I feel like that's almost how it could feel to you, is almost being forced to replay the past in some ways. And so, really working on some strategies to be able to let go of that, to look away from it, and like opt out. Like I'm done replaying the past. I'm letting it fall away. And a lot of it really has to do with like releasing this identification that you had with this past version of yourself, understanding that now that you are reborn into this present moment, that past self is completely dead and buried. Like that has nothing to do with you. All these things that happened to your past self have no bearing on the present moment in a sense, right? Like in a way, the continuity of your mind has learned from these experiences and maybe developed new strategies or learn new information. But on this core level of your being, you have this freshness in you, this transformed feeling of rebirth that is completely new to this present moment. And really, nothing from the past actually is relevant to it. So, in the sense, it's almost like when you're watching these memories replay in your head, it's almost as if you are watching someone else's memories. And in this sense, it gives you a feeling of being a little bit detached from it, in that you can accept that it is just a movie. It is just these fragments of information and scenes that don't actually exist, right? Because when it comes to your memories, the only place where they actually live is in your mind, and they're so filtered from the observations that you made at the moment, or like maybe if you were under the influence of some sort of drugs, or if you were really tired, or if you were really awake. All these things influence how strongly a memory is internalized into us. And so there could be this feeling of like these memories feeling really significant to you. But a lot of the reason for that is because maybe there was some heightened emotional feeling at the time that really imprinted it more strongly. Or maybe there was just the fact that you've been replaying it over and over has strengthened it. But you need to understand that these memories are complete illusions. They're just something created by our minds that aren't actually real in a sense, right? And like maybe you could think back to some of these memories and understand that actually, in a way, you're the only one keeping them alive. Because other people may have forgotten them, or if other people remember things differently, which we all do, in a sense that their memory of this event is completely different from yours. And so your perception of the event is not actually of the real event, right? It's just of your memory. So there is this feeling of like understanding that these things that you might be clinging onto just are not actually real. And that's why you have to let go of them, because they are illusions that are holding you back. All right, let's pull a few more cards. Alright, we have the Strength card. Okay, so this is definitely emphasizing this feeling that you really need a lot of strength in this present time in dealing with these complicated energies. There is something that is just within you, and that is a beast that needs to be tamed. And being able to control this ability, like I mentioned, is like in some ways it could be your greatest strength, but it could also be the thing that could kill you, like the lion, but maybe not literally kill you. And like, I mean, maybe honestly, things can get pretty bad, but there is this feeling of like, when you learn to tame that beast, it becomes your greatest power. And so to not get too like dragged down in this feeling of like there's so much to deal with, this energy is so heavy, it's oppressing me, but really understanding that you are one of the rare people who can actually tackle this beast. And it's important for you to exercise this power and to not give in. Because in a sense, like when you get more used to exercising this power, it becomes second nature to you. So I feel like the reason it feels so heavy to you is because it's maybe something new that has just sprung up in you. Like it's a new skill that you just discovered you had, or you have just newly discovered that you're able to take on a lot more of this energy than you previously thought. So I think there is this feeling of like, yeah, like learning to tame the beast and make it work for you. And this feeling of it being like a really continual process where like it's really never over in a sense. It's something you're gonna battle with like every conscious moment. So in that sense, it almost can feel a little bit intimidating or difficult, but also understanding that there is the opportunity for blessing in every moment. Like um, it's yeah, like it's a two-sided sword, really. All right, and we have the Queen of Pentacles here. So I think there is this feeling of like you are growing something within you. You're developing this new power, and it's something that will scale really immensely or incrementally, is what I'm getting. It's like if you've played video games, you know what I'm talking about. It's this feeling of like when you have the sword, it does 1 damage. Then you level up level 2. Now it does 5 damage. But by the time you get to level 50, it's doing like 10,000 damage, right? So it is this feeling of like things are not scaling so linearly. And when you're just at the beginning of your journey, it does kind of feel like that, like you're treading through mud in a sense. But the more that you develop this power within you, and like I mentioned with this breathing exercise of this glowing ball of light close to your stomach, it's this feeling of like, this new power that is just growing inside of you and growing brighter and brighter and larger to the point where it almost becomes like its own entity in a sense, and it's almost fighting for itself. Where at the beginning, you really have to put in this effort of like every little step is quite difficult for you, but once you develop this power, it's almost like something that works automatically. All right, let's draw one more card to wrap up this reading. All right, we have the Six of Pentacles. So there's this feeling of like the fact that this gift is almost a blessing to you, and a blessing to others as well. Because when you choose to exercise it, you can really brighten other people's days. And like I mentioned with like this visualization of like breathing in energy from the atmosphere that could be negative and then breathing it out as light, it's this feeling of like you're purifying things for other people. You're kind of like a spiritual air purifier is what I'm getting. So like it's a very generous act to be able to do this, of to be in some situation where you can tell the energy is just really dark and heavy, and then be able to transform it into something light, and people will appreciate it. And maybe they don't even necessarily notice that it's you doing it, but I think a lot of the time people will realize that. Because when you're in this process of handling these heavier or darker energies, and when you're really focused on this breathing and visualization process, it's almost like you have this stillness and calmness that influences the whole room, where like maybe people might not understand all this energy work things, but they can just see it visually from you. It's like you're not anxiously fretting about or like shaking your leg, or just the expressions on your face and the way you look around, the way you move your eyes, that shows a sort of anxiety that then produces anxiety in others. And it's kind of like this feeling of like with the little bunny rabbit here, like you're just like a scared bunny rabbit. And I think that when you're in this really calm state, you're not in that scared bunny rabbit energy. You're in this really like peaceful Buddha-like feeling, where, you know, this is why people have statues of the Buddha in their home. Like seeing someone sit in that meditative posture and just with that kind of half smile, it's like that is really calming, and it really brings a lot of gentleness and peace to the people around you. We're just being able to meet you as someone who is able to deal and reconcile with all these heavy feelings around you and within you, and to find stillness within that. It's just such a blessing to everyone that you encounter, and of course yourself most of all. Alright, well, I hope this reading was helpful to you. I hope you enjoyed. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video.